Hello and welcome to this special episode of Kashmir University Video Digest Quest. Special it is that we are talking about the highest seat of learning, and special it is that we are talking to the highest authority, the highest man in the chair, the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi, and we are honored to have him in our studio. Professor Andrabi took over in the wake of devastating September 2014 floods, when Kashmir was witnessing the worst, the darkest, and perhaps the most traumatizing phase of its survival. Our institutions had almost fallen apart. The system was collapsing, and everything was getting drastically affected, not to speak of Kashmir University. And in that tumultuous background, Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi holds the reins of this highest seat of learning. More than a year has gone by, and it's been an eventful journey. Much has gone, much is to go. In this interview, we'd like to know from him about the problems he faced, the challenges he met, the ideas he has to take this institution of highest learning from good to better, and from better, God willing, to the best. Sir, we welcome you to our studio. We are privileged to have you here and to have this talk about the year that has gone by. First, it must have been very challenging given the phase that had gone. I'm talking about the floods, and after that you were given the charge. How do you describe it?
Thanks very much for inviting me over. I must say that I'm as privileged to be here as you suggested you were. In the year that has gone by, I think we have done things that I thought were better than that have happened over the
earlier
so many years before. Perhaps we were lucky because God had tested us with the floods, and then somehow it gave us endurance to do something which had not happened earlier. We have had many challenges also, but God willing, and Alhamdulillah, those challenges we have handled reasonably well. We have, in the first instance, tried to focus on the problems our faculty or administrative staff had that had not been resolved over the years. And Alhamdulillah, I think almost more than 95% problems stand resolved. That was the first challenge we had. And then the second challenge was that this institution, although it is supposed to be the highest seat of learning in the state, had not lived up to the reputation of being a university. And our first endeavor was to actually convert it into a university.
Right.
I am not inclined to even declare at any point during my tenure that we would transform this university into a global university. But my endeavor is to make it look like a university. This perhaps is the only university that starts at 10 o'clock and closes at 4 o'clock. And my endeavor has been to transform this into a vibrant academic institution, as every other university is. Alhamdulillah, we have been reasonably successful in sciences to have this university behave like one. And now we have taken it even further, with university remaining open after 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, but then it may not be as obvious during winter season, although we have tried to basically use winter for coaching of +2 and entrance examination coaching center,
right,
such that the vibrance doesn't go away during winters as well. But in the long run, I think the university will be transformed, inshallah, into an institution that it truly deserves to be.
Thank you, sir. So all our good wishes with you. So you're setting achievable targets, as you put it, that you can't take it to that level. You have to set something that is practicable and that is achievable. After you took over, there was a talk of fiscal autonomy. So our question will be that many people are very curious to know as to how this concept of fiscal autonomy will be beneficial to the institution. Because institution in itself is an autonomous institution that's about the administrative autonomy. What does this fiscal autonomy, how do we put it so that it can be properly understood?
See, if you look the world over,
Sir.
the best of the institutions in the world are not government institutions.
Sure.
They're all private institutions. Browse through top 400 universities. At least 398 you will find are private institutions.
Right, sir.
Private in the sense that they have full freedom to exercise control over the tuition fees, exercise control over what area to give priority and what not to, exercise full freedom on what jobs they want to create and what they do not want to create.
Right.
And then that kind of freedom, an institution really needs to grow. We basically usually have a tradition of generating a certain kind of target, revenue target over the years. That satisfies the state government, and that's about it. We have never even endured at any point that perhaps we could raise even more revenue in terms of satisfying our demands and needs much better than the target set by the government. So the onus in this scenario lies on the government.
Sure.
So the accountability lies on the government. If we were to basically become fiscally autonomous in terms of generating our revenue in order to meet our requirements and do perhaps better than what we intended to do, it would be imperative that the university would have to have control over its revenue generation system on its own. And that is what the concept of this fiscal autonomy was all about. You cannot perhaps at any point in life expect quality without basically paying for it. And then it's like going to a good doctor who charges you 100 rupees. You would not even believe that he would be a good doctor. The same,
so it always goes commensurate.
Absolutely. It always goes
higher
commensurate.
you pay, better the service you get.
Absolutely. So you basically have to grow in terms of global standards, in terms of national standards, in terms of standards that are set by international benchmarks. So for that to achieve...
And that are universally acceptable.
Absolutely. For that to achieve, you cannot keep on pleading and banging your head against the wall and asking the state government, despite their limited resources, to keep on funding us over and over again for this thing or the other. So the better would be to have our own rationalization of resources such that you would raise the resources and focus on things that you really need to focus on. And that was the whole concept.
So we talk a little about the expansion project. University is now growing up. We have campus emerging at North Campus and then South Campus, and we have campuses at Kargil and at Leh. How do you reconcile these two parallel concepts of expansion and consolidation? And how do you see the development of all these campuses vis-a-vis the development of the main campus, that is the Kashmir University?
These are the challenges that I actually was very sensitive about from the very beginning, that we have had enormous growth in terms of infrastructure requirements, in terms of manpower requirements at these campuses, and which we are not justifiably catering to.
Right.
And that is what the rationale for the whole thing was, that you have to have these campuses at par with the main campus. And because in the end, we are offering a degree that has to be exactly the same, from whether somebody qualifies from South Campus or North Campus, but we're not in a position to provide the same kind of infrastructure to these campuses.
Right.
It is a challenge which we are now almost ready to come up with a plan to handle, such that you at least bring the quality of education at these campuses at par with the main campus. You obviously cannot afford to have the same kind of faculty recruited at all these campuses, but we can perhaps do an technological intervention to at least have the same kind of faculty deliver talks and lectures, so that people in South Campus, North Campus, and Kupwara Campus also can be benefited from the same talks. We have somehow failed on or let ourselves down in not exploiting the technology to the maximum. And that's what we are basically focused on. Plus, this financial autonomy would also rationalize provision of budget for South Campus, North Campus, Kupwara Campus, Leh and Kargil Campus, such that every campus grows uniformly.
Right.
Otherwise, there is this disparity in growth of individual campuses, regardless of how earlier one campus or the other campus was started.
Right.
We have Zukura campus also. We are running short of faculty on that as well.
Right, sir.
But then these are the challenges we're faced with currently, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll basically live up to those challenges and try and resolve them.
So you're talking about Zukura campus science block. How optimistic are you about it, and will we have the engineering university that's been your long cherished wish in the future?
We will. We certainly will. If we have taken up a task, then we are morally obliged to get it done with the way it's supposed to be done. We are faced with lots of challenges in terms of faculty and all, but then hopefully those things also will be resolved soon.
So university has been a dream destination for all those students who come out of colleges after graduating. They want to see themselves in the university in different departments. The crowd that's coming out is enormous. The capacity that university has is proportionately very, very limited. How do you see this challenge in the future, and what are the safeguards and what is the support system so that this whole problem can be negotiated well?
It's a very serious kind of issue in the sense that the capacity the university has to accommodate students is not as much as the demand is. In a way, this is good because quality education cannot be thrown open for every Tom, Dick and Harry.
Right, sir.
And, it has to be competitive. That is an advantage, but at the same time a disadvantage as well, in the sense that many of the students who are reasonably good actually end up at different places outside the valley and end up in institutions which are not as good as they, at least as they project themselves to be. But then to live up with this challenge, we envisaged introduction of South Campus, North Campus, but then somehow we did not live up to the idea of what those campuses were conceived with. Technically those campuses had to be very specialized campuses so that, some of the specialities would be catered to in North Campus, some of the specialities would be catered to in South Campus. But then, unfortunately, these campuses have been turned into regular campuses where you have repetition of the programs and courses that are offered at the main campus, and it has created lots of logistic problems as well. But then we are now focused on converting at least South Campus into a specialized campus such that it becomes in the end a campus which offers certain programs which are not offered anyplace else.
Right.
It would be imperative on part of every student to actually flock to or go to South Campus to seek a particular kind of education, and it would be imperative for people from across the valley to go to North Campus to get themselves educated in a particular area, exactly the same way as Zukura Campus has now been designated as engineering campus.
Right, sir. Sir, here I take a little liberty of talking to a teacher, because my next question will be addressed to a teacher, to a researcher, more than to a Vice-Chancellor. You've been yourself Dean Research. You know that research is the foundation, is the key to great academics that we have in the universities the world over. Do you, as a researcher, as a teacher first, and then as a Vice-Chancellor, how far do you agree to this fact that the standards of research are, I'm not talking about the Kashmir University, overall, standards of research are declining, and what do you think is to be done to maintain and to take up those standards of research so that they are commensurate with the higher level of academics that you hold?
I wouldn't agree with you more on this, that theoretically, university job is to create knowledge.
Sure.
It is not to disseminate knowledge. And I fully endorse that we have not lived up to that expectation.
We are only disseminating, we are not creating.
Absolutely. And you cannot create knowledge without research.
Sure.
And the fundamental responsibility of all the universities is research. And if you look globally also, you will see that the most of the research is being done at the universities and designated research institutions. It is unfortunate that the policymakers in the country in general and in the state in particular have never focused on this aspect, excepting of course since 2010 when UGC came up with these newer regulations that makes it incumbent on a university teacher to do research as well.
Sure.
Earlier, the mandate was to only teach, which I do not endorse and do not agree with at all. Because if it were left up to me, I would have all these postgraduate programs shifted over to colleges with good faculty to teach students up to postgraduate level and leave university only for research purposes. Because this is the only way you can actually benefit the country and the society and everybody else, because you would have in the end created something different than what was already written in the textbooks. Plus, it's also important to note that if a teacher delivers a lecture in postgraduate program, in any postgraduate program, that's already written in the books, then he would rather hand over the book to the individuals and ask them to study at home.
Ask them to study, sure.
So
what's the role of a teacher?
A university teacher, if he were a researcher, his lecture would be slightly different than what is written in the textbook. And that is how he would contribute better as a teacher as well than he does currently without doing any research.
Sure. So you see a changed role of a teacher, that a teacher can play a greater, a bit different role as a researcher.
Much better.
So there's been a general complaint of researchers that it takes unusually longer, and that's sometimes to the extent of getting frustrated at the research work and the paperwork that they have to do. It's not only about the researchers, it's also about the degree holders who come out of the universities, and then they have to go through the whole rigmarole of getting their papers complete and then getting degree. How do you see the role of technology in all this so that students are benefited and then they do not have to face those hardships and difficulties while getting through this?
I'm sure the paperwork is not all that much, but nonetheless it is still cumbersome. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, this society, you cannot transform overnight. We have not been doing any research. We have only been doing this paperwork business. We have not been doing this, you know, what we call, you know, clerical work all our lives. And all of a sudden now we're doing research, and earlier it was not an issue at all. Now we're doing more and more research, and now these issues have started coming up. As I said, that we do not, you cannot transform yourselves overnight.
But initiatives can be
absolutely
taken.
We have basically taken many initiatives. See, earlier we did not have an Office of Dean Research.
Sure.
Now we have an Office of Dean Research. That means research is getting priority. Now we have a full-fledged accounting for Dean Research. Earlier we did not have. That means research is getting priority. We have full drawing and disbursing powers with Dean Research for project work and other things. Earlier they used to be with registrar. That means research is getting priority. And as remains these paperwork hassles, we are actually working on that as well to minimize it as much as possible. But then it takes a while before you actually get to
So you put it right that things cannot change overnight, but certain initiatives can be taken on the ground. Will that be, just for argument's sake, will that be that someday we'll have a database and students will have to fill up their own details and to get that degree certificate by means of technology, by means of gadgets, so that all this hack work, this clerical work that you're putting, the influence of babudom can be reduced to a minimum level, not to eliminate it completely?
That's my endeavor. My endeavor is that we have not taken advantage of the technology as much as we could have. An individual who qualifies first semester examination, who qualifies second semester examination and third semester examination gets a mark certificate for all these 3 semesters.
Absolutely.
Which in the end becomes redundant because he gets a cumulative mark certificate at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I mean, one of our newly recruited deputy controllers, he's a technology man. He said that, and I immediately endorsed it, and I said that we have to get away with this. And he also suggested that what is the rationale of asking a student to wait for 2 years to get his degree certificate after he has completed his degree? And I immediately, as I said, the technological intervention has not been very efficient as was desirable. But then we are, as I said, very slowly and steadily addressing all these smaller issues, which in the end would start giving us dividend maybe in the next 5, 6 years.
And so students will be saving on shoe leather, and you will be saving on manpower, because you will require much less manpower in manning that technology, rather than getting the whole team dedicated to something that can be done at the click of a mouse.
Absolutely.
So that is your endeavor.
Absolutely.
So your idea of setting up 2 medical colleges, what about that? Do you see them in the future fructifying this seed that you wanted to sow? When will we expect the fruit?
As I said, it's a very huge expenditure. As I said, it's in my priority list, and priority list will not basically change. But then we need very huge expenses for setting up a medical college. For that, we actually needed to increase our corpus.
Sure.
The first endeavor, first objective was to get ourselves financially autonomous so that we can improve upon our corpus.
Right.
Once that corpus grows, then only we can consider establishing more institutions. For improving upon our corpus, what we have done is that we have started this +2 coaching. We have started, we're envisaging to start an undergraduate college to increase our revenue, such that a small portion of that revenue can be stashed away for bigger endeavors like establishing of medical colleges.
Right.
But then that remains on the agenda.
Sir, a word about 2 nursing colleges.
We, at South Campus and North Campus, not North Campus precisely, but in Sopore, are planning on establishing 2 nursing colleges. On South Campus, we have already identified a building, and the admissions will start in 2016. The paperwork for its recognition by State Nursing Council and procurement of equipment and recruitment of staff is underway. At Sopore, we are inclined to rent a building near a hospital, and for that also, the process is on. And then hopefully that nursing college will also be started in 2016.
Right, sir.
In addition of that, we have also established Institute of skill development at South Campus, for which University Council recently gave its concurrence. And for that, a layout plan has already been established, and we are also basically including in that skill development institution the traditional needlework, tailoring, paper mache, and other skills that somehow over the years have lost their sheen and lost their relevance.
Sir, if there's a disparity between the number of students that come out of colleges and the number of seats available here, that's on one count. The second is that the number of seats available here and then the hostel accommodation, that is quite disproportionate. That has been a chronic problem with the students. What have you done in this 1 year to meet this problem and meet this challenge?
I think as this problem is as chronic that it would obviously require a while before it is sorted out completely. But then what we have done is that we have added 1 more girls' hostel on campus.
Sure.
And 2 boys' hostels in Zakura campus. So that should largely cater to the immediate requirements, but long-term requirements obviously demand lots of finances, and we are very sensitive about that as well, to create some more hostel facilities such that the growing demand of the students, growing rush of the students over the years, coming years is addressed to in advance.
And it's a large number of students coming from far off places. They face a huge difficulty on this count. So we hope that this step solves their problem to a considerable extent. So what's been done for students this year, providing them different kinds of facilities other than that they were availing earlier?
We have had some things done to improve upon student amenities, also you can have a look at the campus. About 6 dhabas are coming up, and those are intended to provide affordable food to students who come from far-flung places. But the dhabas have been designed such that they remain clean and very, attractive, hygienic, and then people, have no hesitation in believing that the food they are getting is as good as, it has to be. That is something we have done for students. We have also planned on creating a gymnasium for both men and women. We're also inclined to have certain other empowerment, making students a little more empowered, in the sense that students at university will be empowered to question the evaluation of a teacher.
To bring in more transparency.
Absolutely,
in the whole system.
because the transparency in the end is what will take this university forward. The credentials of the university can only go up by being more and more transparent. We are actually envisaging transparency in everything we do. In terms of finances, what we have done is that we have revamped the total financial system, that from next year onwards, inshallah, we will have the budgetary statement available online. At the end of the day, you should be able to know how much we have spent and how much is inclined to be spent, on what items we spend things on. Everything will be online.
No iron curtains.
Absolutely not.
So that's about students. Now about those which you also are a part of, the fraternity of teachers, that they too have great expectations from you. What's been done in this year for teachers?
We had very serious problems with certain class of teachers. For example, the teachers who were caught in the web of 2000 and 2009 regulations of the UGC, and their cases were pending for years together. We have had, alhamdulillah, all those cases resolved, excepting maybe 1 or 2 that are still pending. But then that has been a big relief, and then everybody seems to be very comfortably placed now, and in line with future growth in accordance with 2009 UGC regulations. We have also had certain issues resolved for our officers, university officers. They are also reasonably placed because most of the problems seem to have been solved. We have also resolved the issues pertaining to IT professionals. The University Council recently approved their promotional policy. We are also inclined to see all isolated cases where the problems still exist and have them resolved, because unless you make your family comfortable, you cannot expect growth and prosperity. And I believe strongly that more or less reasonably everybody is comfortable now, and then we can all join hands and make this university go forward.
So choice-based system has been endlessly and thoroughly debated. There are different perceptions about this choice-based system as to it will be really beneficial for the students or not. We would love to have a word from you.
As I have my personal perspective on this, I have a perspective as Vice Chancellor.
Sure.
As Vice Chancellor, I am morally obliged to follow UGC guidelines, and so I endorse choice-based, credit-based system.
And then as teacher, as person?
As a person, I do not endorse this at all. Because there is a pyramid system of growth in education, and then all of a sudden at master's level, you introduce choice-based, credit-based system is not as intelligent as it would be.
Should have been.
I did bring this issue up with Vice Chairman UGC, and he was fully in agreement with what I say.
Right, sir.
But then he said he could not do anything about it because this was an order and we're supposed to be abiding by this order. Ideally, this choice-based, credit-based system is suited for undergraduate programs because it gives you lots of versatility and it gives freedom to a student to apply for master's program in anything that he has studied at undergraduate level. But at postgraduate level, he is supposed to be specializing. So if he now, instead of specializing, starts going around and taking these optional programs, he would not in the end have specialized.
Right, sir.
So that is my personal view. But on the view that I have to be
That's explicit enough that you can
abiding by UGC regulations, so I am.
Sir, a word about launching some new courses and giving some new streams some space in the university. There have been some new courses, but certain things that need to be taught in the university, like philosophy or like anthropology, which are being taught at a global level. And in fact, there was a time when philosophy was considered as a queen of all knowledge, the broader rubric under which all streams would come. Any ideas, any plans in your mind that you want to have some new departments coming out in the campus?
We basically have started, I think, nanotechnology. We have started some programs, or at least, in fact, starting some programs at Kupwara campus in energy studies.
Right, sir.
But as far as philosophy is concerned, I personally do not know much about philosophy, so I would have examined it if a proposal to the effect had come from the concerned faculty. But as you put it, I think philosophy is very important, and so is anthropology.
Though they are being taught as parts of the curriculum.
I'm sure if the deans of the concerned faculty were prompted, I think these would be something worthwhile and would not require too much of investment.
Investment also. Sir, a word about bringing some discipline, or in fact reimposing that discipline that we already have. Do you have any plans of introducing biometrics, or with it the 5-day week system that's being practiced in many institutions, so that we can have it in Kashmir also, in Kashmir University also?
We have introduced biometric system in our administrative staff, but then UGC regulations do not permit introduction of biometric system for teaching, because there are some relaxations in teaching hours, because every teacher is supposed to stay here for 5 hours a day.
Right, sir.
So there are logistic problems in having it imposed on teaching staff. But then the rest of the staff, we have, including myself, we have introduced biometric attendance. In as far as
5-day week.
5-day week is concerned, we have logistic problems in there also, because in September, at 5 o'clock, we have, the sunsets at 5 o'clock, and
right,
then
sir.
It's very difficult, because the infrastructure we have created over the years is not in tune with, catering to, teaching and academic and research work after 5 o'clock. So there are some logistic problems, but I was actually contemplating to have this experimented for 6 months or 7 months a year, and then switching back to 6 days a week.
Right.
We are contemplating to take that to University Council. I think we'll be looking at that very seriously, because that brings us in tune with other universities, like we have SQUAST, we have IUST, we have 5-day week. But then in September, October, it becomes a little difficult. So we are basically on experimental basis trying to take it to council for at least 6 months. That we are contemplating.
Sir, we've had this much about the academics and about the fiscal autonomy and other choice-based system and many other things related to the institution, the Kashmir University. If I ask you to have just one thing to write home about in this 1 year, of all the things that we have discussed so far and that you have enlisted or enumerated, just one thing that really gives you satisfaction, that this is that I feel that I've done something. Just one thing, single it out.
I think the Vice-Chancellor earlier on used to be a larger-than-life figure. Very limited access. I am accessible 24/7. I think all teachers and all officers of the university, including 4th class officers, have access and are very comfortably placed in terms of discussing their problems, discussing their issues, discussing their including students who can write SMSs to me and get their problems addressed and sorted out. And I think that has been the biggest contribution, that Vice-Chancellor is one of the university family members and not a figure which is not a figure which is outside the university.
There's nothing that sort of heady stuff about being a Vice-Chancellor.
Absolutely.
Sir, if it's not touching on the raw, do you think that all Vice-Chancellors earlier, or some of them?
I'm not sure. I don't want to discuss it. I only want to discuss.
So let's have some genuine, soft,
absolutely.
moderate
One of them.
exceptions
This is
also.
this university belongs to all of us, and my endeavor is that everybody has to be a part of this university.
Now, the last part of it about your person, that do you miss teaching now since you are to discharge your duties as the Vice Chancellor? And how do you see the difference between being the head of the institution and being somebody who is devoted to his teaching and to his research and whose interaction is only with the students? That's a bit of an intimate or a personal question.
It's a slightly bigger role for me, but I think I am as good as I was when I was a teacher. I still go at 5 o'clock to my lab and spend a couple of hours there. But then, as far as teaching is concerned, I had proposed to be offering an optional program, but unfortunately they put it in third semester as opposed to first semester. So I did not get an opportunity to teach that, but once the third semester commences, I will be teaching again. So there is absolutely no reason why I would not, and there is absolutely no reason why I would be any different than a teacher who I am proud of.
You would prefer to be called as a teacher?
I am a teacher.
Still.
I still am a teacher.
First.
No, I'm a teacher still and happen to be a Vice Chancellor.
You happen to be a Vice Chancellor. So thank you very much for this wonderful interview, and we are really honored to have you in our studio, and you talk about so many significant things about the university and other things that pertain to the institution of highest learning. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much.
So there was Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi talking about the university, the problems, the challenge that he has faced all these months. It's been more than a year that he is in the office. We wish him all luck, and we wish he takes this institution to excellence. With these words, we take your leave, and we hope that you enjoyed our conversation with Professor Khurshid Iqbal Andrabi. Thank you very much.